Hi people, welcome back to the channel. It's Monday morning and we're coming in. I had a job planned I wanted to do with the Swamping Monster truck, and I wanted to replace the radiator. So I've had this radiator for a while, so it's down. I've got it down from upstairs and it's down here. So I was gonna fit that today, but I've come in and for some reason Swamp Thing's had a huge oil leak. And it's coming from the end of the axle. Now, for that amount of oil to come out, it is out the planetary. I think what's happened, I don't know, it hasn't moved, so I don't know why, but I think the half shaft seal has leaked because it's let the oil out the axle housing onto the floor. So all that lovely Lucas oil, it leaks out the kingpins normally a little bit. There's a little O-ring in there, but they get destroyed. But all that lovely Lucas oil is on the floor. So I'm gonna take the end of the axle off. I have to take the whole champagne off to get the seal out and put a new seal in it. So I'm gonna do that first. Clean up the oil, because I don't want to work in the oil because it's quite messy. And then I can get on to having a look at doing the radiator, the thing I was gonna do today anyway. Well, let's get started. Okay, that looks a lot better. All the oil is cleaned up. Right, next thing to do, we're going to drain the oil out of this. Hopefully there's a lot of oil in there, because I think the oil is leaking out of the axle. So let's take this off to see how much oil's in there, and then we can go from there whether we actually have to take all of this off, because I think the seal, what's broken, is in the back of here. So let's start taking it apart.
Take me in slow, breathe me in and let me go. Filling the lungs inside you, and the blackened eyes make my way into your mind. Just to know what you knew. Restless every time we start locking eyes. Lost control.
So there is all the axle components, the gearbox and everything all off the truck. And when I pulled out that long shaft, it pulled out a lot miles too easy. And also you can see in here, we've got all the oil. So in the back of there, there's a seal with an O-ring in it. And of course, when I pulled it out, it should be quite a hard, when I normally put them in, I have to smack them in with a hammer and use this as like a slide hammer to get that piece out. So we got to change that seal in the back of it, but to do that the seal has to come out forwards, and to do that we have to take everything off the end of the axle, including the champagne, and then put it all into the press. So let's get that off. You've noticed I've already put some pieces of metal in here, so we're not actually using the shock absorbers to hold the truck up. We're on axle stands down there. So next we got to take off all the knuckle assembly, the steering, the shock absorbers, the anti-roll bar, disconnect. That's the self-centering on my truck. It goes to that little thing down there. So we've got to take all that apart off next, so we can get to the champagne, so we can get to where the seal is.
Over the edge, feel like I'm floating through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done.
Okay, so I've got the champagne off, and the seal we want to change is this one here. So it goes in that way. So the reason we have to take this off, because we have to push it out that way. So I'm going to put it in the press and do it that on here. Coming out. There it is. Take that back a bit. So my new one is slightly different. So this one, if you notice on this one, it looks a lot longer than that one. But this one's got 2 O-rings in it, and that one's only got the 1. So just got to flip it over now, lubricate that, push that one in. And we're good to put it all back together. Okay, so been quite busy, but put the champagne on, and I'm going to tell you the truth, I forgot to put that on the first time. So we had it nearly all ready to go, and then I realised I had every single bolt in, and then I realised I hadn't put that on, and that has to go on the champagne before it bolts onto there, because there's no other way of getting that on there. So must remember, it isn't the first time I've done that as well. So yeah, just one of those things. Should think a little bit more. Okay, that's the knuckle back on. We just got to put the kingpin bearing in next, and then line everything back up. Okay, so we put the jack under the bottom, that actually straightens it up, and then we can get the top back on. So all we got to do now is put on the wheel tether, do this up, and then we have to put the dust seal that I forgot earlier, bolt that back onto the knuckle, and then we can put all the steering in. Okay, since we last updated you, we've actually put a new kingpin bearing in it. And because we put a new kingpin bearing in it, we had a problem. So if you come down to here, if you look on the end, look, shining this way. Can you see that? So when this shaft was in here, it was right at the very top of this. So this shaft was touching the side of that, and it had no clearance in it at all. So now we've re-shimmed it all, and now we got wiggle room up and down, left and right, because basically where the kingpins were, this bit wasn't in the middle of the axle. So it was actually too far down. So we've had to shim it all up. So we got clearance here, and then once we've done that, we have to check that there's enough clearance. So we have to take the steering off, and then you turn it backwards and forwards to see it's got no binds in the bearing, and also that it is absolutely tight. So when you're pulling on here, you're not having any rock in the bearings at all. So that is what we've had to do. So now we can assemble back all the steering on it. We can finish putting all the champagne bolts in there and Loctiting them in there. Well, not Loctiting, it's JB Weld, sorry. Yeah, so we can put all the fixings in there, and then we can build up the planetary, and then we can put a new dust seal, oil seal on the back here. So on the end of it, so it keeps all the oil in the planetary. We're going to put a new seal on there as well, and that should fix the oil leak. So while I've been putting this back together, me and Georgina have been having a talk about monster trucks and how it works. And she knew it didn't move, but basically inside the end of the axle, this thing doesn't move. So what happens is the power comes from this into the sun gear, which connects into the planetary, which connects into this big ring. And then by the bolts on the outside of this, it connects to the wheel, and that's what makes the wheel go round. So if you didn't have any of the bolts in there, all what would happen with this cover, that cover would spin round on its own, which sounds really weird. But also you think about how much power a monster truck's got. So when the engine's sat in here, all the power from the engine is going through the flex plate into the gearbox, and the gearbox has only got 6 little bolts that hold it in, that takes all the power through the monster truck. So you think about how much power is going through those bolts into the transmission that comes down this huge prop shaft into the diff. So all that goes through there. That's where the brakes are on the monster truck, and then it goes into the diff and it comes all the way out through the axle into this, and then all what connects it all to the power are the bolts that go around here. So the planetary is all back together, so it's all bolted on. It's only got a few bolts in it because I've got a whole load new bolts on order, and then we can seal it and paint it. So next job we're going to do is we're going to take out the gearbox. Seeing the engine is out, we're going to take the gearbox out, get into the middle of the cradle, and then check it for cracks, and then we can take the shock absorbers off, and then we can repaint the back end of the chassis. So let's set the gearbox out now. So that's the torque converter out. Let's take the gearbox out now. Catch the oil, because when I pull that out, the oil's going to come out. So let's leave that there for a second. Let's get a tray underneath there. That's why I wanted to grab a tray, because this, even though we've drained the oil out the gearbox, there's still some bits left in this end piece because there's no way for it to drain back into the sump. Leave it there to drain for a bit. Okay, so we've started to do the radiators. So the radiator, what came out of my truck is that one, which is actually out of a Range Rover. And I used to have the fans mounted on the back. And this one, I'm mounting the fans on the front. It's quite a bit bigger, the radiator. It's got a bit more volume. And I've got some new fans. So that is the old size fans I used to have on the back of that one. and the new ones are over here. So I've started making the surround to go on it, and these are the new fans that's going to go onto this. So I've cut all this out. This was a huge, that was off that huge sheet, so I've cut this out, put rib nuts in there, cleared it for some air through the radiator, so they get mounted on there like that. So there's two of them on there, and they're quite a bit bigger than the old ones. So there's quite a bit difference in size of them. Just got to finish making this part of the radiator before we actually try and fit it into the truck, because I've got to modify this. This is what the radiator sits on, so I've got to modify that because the other one's a lot wider, and also I've got to move some of this because it comes up a bit higher. And then we've got to modify some water pipes because the new radiator is a lot bigger than that, so we're going to have to sort something out there. But that's what Monster Truck's about. Okay, since we last done a little bit of filming, the truck has gotten more and more in bits. Gearbox is out, there's no shocks on it now. All the header tanks, the hydraulic tanks, they're all gone. Fuel tank is out. I don't think I've already shown that, but the fuel tank's out. So the next thing we've got to do now is cut the old brackets out for where the radiator used to be held in. So we're going to cut them out. Then we can drop the new radiator in. I can make the bottom mount. I can't make the top mount yet because there's going to be another mount that goes in here that has to remove to get the radiator in and out. But under the bottom of the radiator and the top of the radiator, I need some neoprene in it, and the neoprene hasn't come in yet. It should be in today. But I can make the bottom mount. We can put the neoprene in it to absorb the impact, so it doesn't put a lot of stress into the radiator. And then we can make the top mount and then work all that out. And then I can probably make the header tank mount today because I'm going to know roughly where that is as well. So let's get on with cutting some of this out. I'm stuck. I got into this position, I've got to try and get out of it now. One more bracket to go, and then we're all clean, and we can start making the new bracket. So with this one now, because it was such a big bracket, I put a slitting disc through it, and then I'll just go back with a weld and put a weld just to tidy it all up. So one last bracket, and then we can start making the new one. So the radiator system is now fitted. So we got the channel at the bottom with rubber in the bottom of that, and then it comes up to the top. So there's rubber underneath this, and the way I've done it, I've encapsulated it over the top so it can't come anywhere at all. Then it's also got the header tank mounted to this bracket, and it's also mounted to this bar here. So that is all contained, and then on the end of the radiator, it's got these other brackets that bolt in and out to stop the radiator from sliding side to side, and that everything is mounted on rubber, and everything is quite easy to get out of. So to get the top mount off, it's that one there. Two of the bolts, the top ones they're welded into the mount, but those ones are actually bolted through at the back. So those two come out of the back, and then that's the whole radiator system out of the truck. Come out quite neat. The other reason why I wanted to mount the fans on the front is because sometimes I have to get to there's two bolts there. It's easier if I show you this side. Yeah, so there's two bolt holes here I have to get to when I do the fuel tank, and with the radiator of the fans and everything in here, it also gives it a little bit more cooling because the fuel tank sits in behind here up to about there, and it just gives a little bit more air to come out over the top of the fuel tank. So the next thing we're doing, we're taking everything else out the back of the truck now, and then we're going to strip it all completely and then repaint the whole back end of the truck.
Suck me in the smoke, breathe me in and let me go. Filling the lungs inside you, and the blackened eyes make my way into your mind. just to know what you knew. Restless every time we start looking as